got one. And
I
then,
found out about it.
Yeah.
no,
I took out
no,
someone
that's
who's
no,
experienced frustration.
no. Let's start, what?
That would not be me,
Okay, so
but.
let's go.
She'd be like, oh, yeah.
What is black?
Does everyone have a question?
Number 5, supervisors who stop and assigned to
What is black
charges
now?
have the mindset of managing workloads. That's more of a Michael one,
So,
but
that
oftentimes
one
the
here
staff
and that one here,
represent
maybe,
mention the
Yes, it is. Okay, greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody, including the PTC Council and Executive Team. We'd like to welcome you to the Spring 2019 Exchange of Views with the Executive Team at Seminole State College of Florida and Educational and Technical Employee Council, board and officers and members. That's a lot of talking there. So for those who don't know online, my name is Michael McCurdy. I'm an instructional designer here at Seminole State College in the e-learning department and also the PTC chair for this year. Last time we did this, we did not do introductions, and so my apologies for anyone who was like, so who are those people up there? Because I'm not quite sure who any of them are. Oh, that's who Dr. Ross is, okay. So we're going to start off introductions, and Mr. Rick Collins will start. We'll just pass the microphone around, your name, what you do here, and that's it.
Hi, I'm Rick Collins. I'm the Interim Vice President for Financial Services and CFO, and I deal with all things dealing with money, which we don't have a lot of right now.
Hi, good afternoon. Paul Carlin, I'm General Counsel.
Hello, everyone. James Miller. I coordinate our MERGE grant for sustainability and renewable energy. I'm a board member for PTEC this year.
Hi there, I'm Laura Ross, Vice President, Academic Affairs.
I'm Shayla Harris, Director of Student Success Services, and I am a board member for PTEC.
Dick Hammond, Vice President for IT and Student Affairs.
Hi, I'm Gerald Jones, Director of Student Life, and I'm the Vice Chair of PTEC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Georgia Lorenz, President of the college.
You've heard from me.
Good afternoon. May Ashby. I have the pleasure of heading up our HR team. Nice to see all these friendly faces.
Brittany Russman, Institutional Research. I'm a board member of PTAC.
I'm Kate Henry. I'm Vice President, Marketing and Communications.
Hi, Molly Kostenbotter. I'm Dean for Allied Health and Early Childhood Education, and I'm a PTAC board member.
Hello, Kevin Carr. I'm the Manager of Environmental Health and Safety for the college, and I'm also board member for PTAC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carla McCabe. I'm the Constituent Events Coordinator at the college, and I am the Secretary/Treasurer for PTAC.
Janet Balanoff, Associate Vice President for Equity and Diversity and the Title IX Coordinator for the college.
Thank you, everyone. So as we begin our exchange of views, I was just reminded from our team up here that this is an open line of communication between all members of the college, and the information is meant to continuously improve this already fine institution. So our follow-up questions and that will happen from our initial topic statements, and then any maybe open questions you may have. We're going to open that up at about 1:50, give or take that time frame here, to make sure that every member has a chance to ask a question. We're trying Q&A online. Notice I said trying. So if this goes well, awesome. If it doesn't, just email me at didn'twork@seminolestate.edu, and I'll be more than happy to give a response to that. So I believe Carla has our first question.
I have the pleasure of starting off with one of our follow-up topics. And last time we got a little bit of feedback on the bereavement leave and family leave process. I'm looking at you. Hey. So we just had a follow-up just regarding the bereavement leave. So currently Seminole State does not provide bereavement leave to its employees. Any paid leave an employee takes per bereavement must come out of any available annual leave or personal leave. And up to 2-day bereavement leave is provided to staff in another local area institution. And we reference both University of Central Florida and Rollins College, who have a policy on this. So we were just wondering if there's any estimated date that that could be implemented here at Seminole State.
We're jumping right in, huh? All right. So I pulled up some notes because I have some detail I wanted to share with you. So the university system and the college system are two very different systems, have different rules, different regulations, different statutes. So I think it's important to note that. The college that you mentioned was Rollins, which is a private organization. So under our statutes, it's actually statute 1012.865 that governs our college system. It states that any full-time employee who is unable to perform their duties at the Florida college system on account of the unfortunate, it doesn't say unfortunate, but the unfortunate death of father, mother, brother, sister, husband, wife, child, or other close relative or member of the employee's own household shall be granted leave of absence for sickness. And under our own college procedure, which is 2.2000, it states that sick leave may be used as outlined in statute. So I did just want to clarify, because I think when you opened, you said vacation or personal leave out of sick. While those are both fine, it's actually just sick leave. You don't have to go into your personal sick leave. So I wanted to clarify that. I think there's a misunderstanding. In addition to this, the Employee Benefits Committee also researched this issue and looked at this concern and matter that you're bringing up. And so I think it's important that all of us check the Employee Benefits Committee. I'm looking around. I don't see anyone in this room that's one person that's a member of this committee, new to the committee this year, 2 people. But that committee meets very frequently, especially last year, and they post all of their agendas. They post all of their minutes, their occurrences, so please feel free to keep up with that. But they've also been working on this issue simultaneously. Didn't know if you were aware of that. And they've agreed that the topic is appropriately reviewed, researched, discussed, and don't recommend any further action. What they did do is a couple things. They updated the leave. They're in process of updating the leave form to include a section for bereavement. I think that will help with some of the misunderstanding. So that will be categorized appropriately. And we also worked with, the Employee Benefits Committee also worked with CTS to update the college's search function. So when you type in bereavement, which before nothing happened, but now when you type in bereavement, it is supposed to link directly to procedure 2.200. So kind of bringing it all together. No other Florida college system, including our neighbor Valencia, offers anything in addition to what I just mentioned. The benefit's already embedded within your leave. Okay.
Sure. Is this on? Okay. Second question, there's many jobs at the college that could provide telecommuting options for staff. And I know some departments actually are more flexible and have their own unwritten or informal policies towards telecommuting or flexible hours. We're also aware that there are certain job duties that don't conform with telecommuting or being flexible. There's certain things, certain jobs that you have to be there. But is there anything in the plans to make it more formal, or something that could be used to where that you said we don't have all these informal, policies and different policies between different departments?
Back again. So yes, to answer your question, Kevin, yes, there is, and there has been behind the scenes, we've been working in HR, also collaborating with supervisors to come up with a formal process. As you mentioned, we already have an informal process, and I encourage everyone to work with your direct supervisor on any type of work arrangement. Telecommuting is just one kind, but there's other kinds too. Sometimes people need to come in later, they need to leave earlier, whatever situation, I just encourage you to work with your supervisor. And if the supervisors in the audience are listening and you don't know what to do when someone comes and asks you these questions, we're here in HR to help you and assist you. We do have a lot of creative solutions, and sometimes it actually works out for the operation. I've used before in HR, we have an employee that for personal reasons and family reasons would really like to work later, and it actually benefits our operation because people often want to come in, especially adjuncts, and fill out paperwork, talk to us after we traditionally close at 4:30. So sometimes it can be a win-win. So I just encourage you to do that while you're waiting formally. We are working on the formal process. I would hope that maybe sometime this fall you'll start to see that roll out and start to go through the process. There is a process to make a procedure, and so start to kind of look for that. I think there's a procedure on creating a procedure. Okay. So, right. Right, which I love that committee, by the way, committee to appoint committees. I do. At first it was funny, kind of, what? But once you're a part of it and you understand the mechanics and the rationale, it's really, really great work that those people do. Does that help answer your question?
A quick follow-up. I've been in a meeting with you and you mentioned this before, and there was a discussion about before the procedure is kind of written is to get feedback from employees. Is that going to be something that's going to happen before the procedure is thrown out there?
Mm-hmm. So Brittany brought up a question that while we're developing the procedure, we're working with supervisors, we're going to talk with different constituent groups and get feedback. But at the end of the day, like Kevin said, I don't want to build false expectations. Not every area, not every department would be applicable to specifically telecommuting. So we mentioned lots of other types of arrangements, flexible scheduling, things of that nature. But of course, your student-facing positions, that wouldn't work. Things like security guard, that you have to be there to help do the job, the important job, and you can't do that necessarily from home. So, okay.
He needs a microphone. There we go.
One on this side of the table, got over there. All right, hello. This topic I think will be kind of a pivot point or like a transition from, so this is kind of staffing and career advancement. So be a little bit of maybe HR, but I think this will kind of broaden out this discussion. So there's a concern that there's a lack of career pathways, lateral or for advancement for staff. Some of the hurdles include a lack of supervisory experience and credentialed technical training. So employees who have many years of service to the college often are unable to be considered for open positions due to lack of supervisory experience in particular. And so we've kind of suggested a possibility of developing a formal career development program at the college to train current employees both for positions that require supervisory experience or that are historically difficult to fill, and usually that would be like a technical position. And so allowing for supervisory opportunities or acceptable equivalents to meet the requirements of supervisory experience. And just as an extra note, this program should occur during an employee's workday and not require employees to take leave, just as part of our kind of commitment to professional and career advancement.
So this is something that we also had a good discussion with the CSEC group for exchange of views, so it's obviously an interest of theirs as well. So we have committed to examining job descriptions as they become available and asking the hiring manager to really evaluate, are X number of years of supervision experience really critical to this position, or could we look at transferable skills or other types of experience that could potentially fulfill that need. You do need to keep in mind that that option will also be available to those outside the college applying for the same position. The same set of qualifications apply to all applicants, and we need to open all jobs to everyone as a public institution. And we have heard this interest in sort of an internal career development program. Some of those things are happening maybe on a more informal basis right now. Women Moving Forward is one such example. But doing that in a more sort of formal way is certainly something that we're interested in working with people on. And also this idea of sort of growing our own, particularly in the IT area, where we have positions that have been vacant for a long time, a couple years. And we have faculty expertise here and staff and manager expertise that could help people prepare for those positions. So I've asked May and Dick to look into, particularly in the area of IT, what could we pilot to try to develop sort of our own internal workforce, because, you know, not just for the employee's sake, but for the college's sake. And I think facilities was another area that we were looking into for that potentially as well. And again, we have internal expertise that we could call upon to try to develop that. Did you want to add anything?
I think that was excellent. I said that was excellent. The only other thing I'd like to add is we piloted a program a couple of years ago called Invest in Yourself, and we are still working out the kinks of that, but we hope to put that on track for fall as well. And that's specifically targeted towards people that want to advance here at the college, and what are some resources that they can access, and hopefully this learning module will help in that path. But I think either Dr. Lorenz said it or the question itself said it, but career advancement really looks different for everyone, and so there's not a one-size-fits-all. But I would encourage you to work with existing resources and also your supervisor or a mentor. I always encourage someone to seek out a mentor. We don't have a formal mentoring program as of today, but a lot of mentoring is something that you would do, or excuse me, maybe we do. Oh, okay. Okay. But a lot of mentoring is something you would seek on your own anyway, and start working on a really personal/professional relationship with someone. Seek them out and just ask them, could you be my mentor? And start networking with them. Maybe you grab coffee once a month and talk through things. I know I've heard Dr. Lorenz say when she finally decided what she wanted to do, she looked at the person and said, how do I get your job? And so if you see people in the college that you want to eventually work in that position, meet with them, talk with them, and we're all here to help each other. So those are just a couple things I wanted to add about that.
I'm going to add a little bit to the front of this question. As of today, I think we're down 12.5% for enrollment for summer. And part of the issue, because our office sends out an enrollment report every day, but it's only to a certain group of people. I'm kind of shocked walking around talking to people that there's people on the front lines who aren't aware that we're down in enrollment. So part of that is how can we turn that around if people aren't even aware we're down in enrollment? Is there a way that we can make that part of like an update every week about where we're at and what needs to be done? And then the second part is, what are we doing to turn around enrollment at this point?
So that enrollment report does only go to I don't know how big group of people, but so 100 people. We would like to ask that those who receive the report share the information with the people in their areas, because it is something that we should all be aware of. I would also say that regardless of what the numbers are, whether they're good or bad or whatever, we should always all be working on facilitating enrollment and giving students access to the awesome education we offer here at Seminole State. And we are working right now on an email to go out this week, either probably today or tomorrow, about our current enrollment situation. One thing that is frustrating to us as a college is, and I know many of you in this room know this all too well, we are sort of subject to new rules and regulations, particularly around federal financial aid, like all the time. And cybersecurity creates other roadblocks, because right now our students have to reset their passwords every 60 days. well, a semester is longer than 60 days. So when they go to enroll for the subsequent semester, then they need to change their password and they don't know how to do it, you know. So there are things that are put up as sort of roadblocks that we need to adjust to, and we'll get it better next semester. Thank God this is happening for summer. But our staff, particularly in enrollment development, are working really hard to reach out to students and make sure that they're getting the assistance they need. I know the help desk has been flooded with calls as well about this password issue. So we do want people to share the information with their areas, and we want to make that an expectation. We can communicate better about these sorts of things, but please know that your colleagues are working really hard to address the problem as well. The other thing that I would say about sort of communication in general is, you know, from our perspective, we feel like we do send out a lot of information and we are literally told, well, I don't read that. So that's kind of frustrating. And then every time we come to exchange of views, people want more communication. So we're trying to figure out how to do it better. I know one of the suggestions here was about having sort of a meatier periodic newsletter, which I think is a great idea. And Kate and I have talked about that specifically. And we know, like, not everybody gets Laura's fabulous academic affairs newsletter because it's academic affairs oriented, but could we take, you know, widely applicable things from her newsletter and from athletics and, you know, have more of a compendium? I think that's a really good idea. People need to open it and read it. And there are also things that are more timely that kind of can't wait for a newsletter, which is why I think the first Wednesdays and my periodic reports and the report that's sent out after the board meetings are important things to pay attention to. And I think we all, myself included, need to become more sort of self-disciplined about going to like the Benefits Committee website and checking minutes. And maybe that's even something each of our professional organizations, like employee organizations, could sort of designate. Maybe we could think of more strategies. So like Michael in his role knows that he needs to report back to PTEC about the Benefits Committee, even if he's not a member, because he's going to regularly check the minutes and agenda. But it does take self-discipline and time to do that. But I would just remind people to avail yourselves of all the information that's out there right now. Your colleagues are spending time producing that too. So I think I jumped a question, but the other thing I would say about communication is, you know, we're right now sort of working on the foundation of the strategic plan. We will have strategic planning summits in the fall. I could imagine just the amount of times I hear about communication, I could see this maybe emerging as a strategic priority or a strategic area that we want to work on as a college. So don't lose sight of this, and when you come to the summits, maybe that's something we can continue to brainstorm on there.
Yeah, it's all the information so far is on there.
I just want to add about the enrollment communications. Dr. Lorenz is going to send out a communication to all faculty and staff later this week. But we're also doing, we've got some issues at the moment in terms of the transition to the new My Seminole State look and feel. It's very different from how students are used to coming onto the platform. So while we did some advanced videos and some advanced education on it, students are, we find, having difficulty finding certain places. So what we're doing is a cheat sheet to faculty for them to deliver in the classrooms so that they can guide students, but we're also doing the email to faculty and staff. We're looking at any way we can possibly get to really inform people about where to go and how every member of staff and faculty can help a student to register for summer because our numbers are down. So please help us. We're doing our very best to communicate, but please help us as frontline people.
I just want to add, just want to add that even though we had a update on the system and how it looks, there are a lot of things in there that students were already doing and we were doing because we're required for federal government or state statute or policy at the college. It just looks a little different. So even some of the labels we used to call register for classes, now it says enrollment. and it's throwing people off. Now, we did send an email to every single student, individualized, that tells them how to navigate the whole thing before it went live. And just like some of you, they don't read them. So it's, they just call, I don't know what to do. So we've done a lot of work to educate them, and rather than do work for them, is show them how to do it themselves, which is different than what we've done in the past. We have had over 12,000 students already completed the work that they needed to do. So we're there. We're the numbers and dealing with the groups, and as they come in, we are addressing the concerns. It's new for the students that are here. For those who are brand new, they don't know any better. So the problems are with the students that are here. It's just like anything else. Somebody gives you a new car and you got to figure out how to drive it for all the buttons for a while, and then it just becomes useful until you get the new car. So that's exactly what it is. It happens every single time. And the regulations from the state and the federal government are always there, and we have to comply. We cannot get around those. It's just educating people on how to do it and how to deal with it every time. So.
Since Dr. Lorenz graciously took my next question, I'm actually going to, no, but a great answer, great segue. Gerald, Dr. Jones, if you'd be able to.
So my question is, while there are some examples of cross-departmental communication at the college, we are still very siloed in our own departments or areas. And so Dr. Lorenz alluded to that one as well. So if we want to elaborate further on that.
Jumping the gun on the next one, but I think that there's an aspect of that concern that was also related to the sense of employee empowerment. And so, for example, somebody in one department being able to work with the person in the other department that in order to make something happen, as opposed to sometimes there's this sense of it having to go up through a supervisor or even multiple supervisors across and then down. So I think that that was actually also an element of the kind of interdepartmental communication. So empowering employees being a concern. So.
So part of the suggested solution was looking for ways to increase interdepartmental communication and collaboration, and Leadership Academy as a part of that, which I think is really a great example. And the potential for implementing more programs, initiatives, and development opportunities for employees to engage in that. I love this idea. I think it's really important for each of us to understand the important job that all of us do at the college and how we impact student success and how we can work together more effectively to achieve that. We want to look for natural opportunities to do that, but then also maybe more, like convocation, other sort of professional development opportunities that already exist, but also look for new ways to do that. And I think Leadership Academy is a very unique and somewhat small program, so I wouldn't necessarily use that as the model. One idea that's come up just recently is I met with the CTS staff, and we sort of talked about the fact that people know that they're there and know that they work really hard, but we kind of don't think about it until something doesn't work. But they're doing all of these innovative things behind the scenes. Could they host even just an open house? Or could they meet with, one other department and really talk with each other about what they do and why they do it? So we're looking at different ways to accomplish this, and we would welcome your ideas. Again, not to harp on the strategic plan, but this is another thing that could potentially emerge even under the umbrella of communication as part of our strategic priorities. So yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to expand on that.
I just want to toot your horn, since you won't, I don't think you're going to do it yourself. But so one thing that I'll just be really frank with you that we're all adjusting to as leaders as well, but one thing that's unique about having a new president is just like when you all came here for the first time, you saw things that other people just becomes part of the background and we don't see it. So she has this new fresh perspective, which is great. One of the things that Dr. Lorenz will do, I know I see people in the room that have experienced it, is let's say, because James, you talked about, 3 or 4 levels down and you can just solve a problem. Dr. Lorenz will just pick up the phone and, she called Jeff. Jeff, I have this matter going on. You're the best person. You're connected to it. Can we chat? Come on up. Let's chat. So that's very refreshing, number one. Number two, I think that helps, James, to your point, that helps employees feel like, okay, I am empowered. I do have the information that's closest to this source. And so, like I said, we're kind of as leaders, this is all new for us. And so when Dr. Lorenz does that, that is her style, and it's really neat. Just make sure to keep your supervisors in the loop, like I know you will, and I know Jeff did. But what that says is that we all have knowledge and answers, and we need to work more with each other and not worry about the kind of the bureaucracy of an org chart. We're all on the same team. We're all working towards the same goal. To that point, communication, just keep everyone in the loop. You don't want to go off, on your own and jump off, into a bad path. But it's just refreshing having a leader showing our college this is an important value, and I live it and I breathe it, and we all need to embrace that.
I would just say that's good that you let people know, because usually when the president calls you, you're very, very worried. It'll take us a little while. So I have the next item, and we've kind of touched on a few of these things, but I think there's some new areas to talk about. Many processes hinder students' pathway in college, from the verbiage, which we talked about, to updates in PeopleSoft. Employees are also feeling overwhelmed by the amount of manual processes and student frustrations. These barriers are impacting enrollment. So the suggestion was to get some feedback from those that are on the front lines, and even their suggestions on potential ways to resolve some of those issues. And then they also here talked about some of the training materials, videos, just making sure that that's sent out timely for the students, and I guess in the right places for students as well.
Obviously, as I said earlier, we did that. And we do it every time. We send it to faculty and staff. One of the issues when we do updates in the system itself, if you do it too early, then people will forget by the time it's time to do it. So we try to do it very timely. So when typically it's after spring break, so we try to do at least 2 to 3 weeks before it goes live. We did the same thing this time as well. When I hear this manual process, somebody will have to kind of tell me exactly what it is, because I don't know what to tell you there. Now, there are cases where we choose to do a manual process instead of electronic. For instance, let me give you two perfect examples. We used to allow employees to change their bank account, right? And you could do it. Now, because of automatic deposit and all that stuff, it was all self-service. Some people were compromised, so their bank account got changed. And we had to change all that process from being automated because their user ID and password, for some reason, for whatever reason, got compromised. A group of employees' checks went to someplace in Seattle. So we don't want that to happen, so we had to take that functionality out of the way and turn the whole process now manual, because we want to see your face, because we want you to get paid. So that's an example. The other example is we can allow in our system for students to withdraw classes. Nope, I don't want to do this anymore, click the button. But then we don't have the chance to, number one, educate them that has implications on your graduation, implication on financial aid, implication, all that stuff. I'm looking at Debbie, close to 60% of the students that we get to see in front of us, we actually save back into the classroom by sending them over to Academic Access Center, by doing all that kind of. If we allow that to be automatic, we'll never see them. And you can look at that system, and there's plenty of self-service functionality that we could activate, but if we do it, we think we are doing a disservice to our students because then we never get to see them. There's a whole bunch of the stuff with payroll and HR that we can do, but again, it's one of those things that if we choose to do it, you may find yourself dealing with bigger problems just because you made it automated, like the payroll issue and the account issue. So unless I could get a specific example of something or suggestion, it'll be great. We have that. Thank you. We have 2 groups of employees. In those of you who are part of it, it's called the Slim and the Fit. They just come up with acronyms. Techie guys doing this. So that involves people from all over the college, from all areas of the college, and they look at all the system functionality and they prioritize it. We in CTS do not prioritize anything. We don't decide what gets worked on and what doesn't. This team is composed of people that work in the trenches as well as managers of those areas. And that's why we got the Slim and the Fit. The Fit are the people at the director level and the Slim are the people at the, and there's something, I can't remember the acronym, what it means for, but it's good. It's nothing bad. So what we do with this is that they look at all the things that come up from anywhere at the college. Anybody wanted to make system updates and changes, and they're also part of the testing process. So when we go live with this system, there's been at least a year and a half worth of testing, and we put it in front of the students. We do focus groups. We work with faculty. We present it to, I mean, it is a lot of work to get to the go live date. So it's not something that we just woke up in the morning and decided to, okay, we got to turn on. So this is the group that evaluates all that.
If somebody's sitting at their workstation and goes, oh my God, I wish I didn't have to do this manual process, could they contact somebody on a Slim or Fit team and talk to them about it?
Chances are the person that contacted me is their supervisor already. So, because that's who they are, who belong to that team. So, but absolutely, if you don't know or don't feel, just let your supervisor know, because they go to these meetings and we meet bi-weekly. It's not one series, it's bi-weekly, and we've done this since 2002. It's not something we just created a few weeks ago. And it's very efficient, and it deals with anything that has to do with how the system works, improvements, updates, how do we deliver, there's communications plans. So all that is thought out. The problem is that we don't go out and tell the world that this is happening every day, because it's what we do for a living. It's part of our work day. So does that make sense? Does that help you?
Yeah, I have a couple kind of broad examples, maybe like Chayla, who works front lines. I think the feedback we're hearing from employees is a lot of the financial aid processes are manual, especially with the new update. Things didn't run correctly and they're doing everything manually. That's part of the frustrations. I think Molly has an example too.
You misinformed. You are misinformed. It has nothing to do with the update of the system. It has to do with the federal government changes the rules every single year. So even though we program that and we learn how to do it this year, it just changes for the next year. So we have to wait for the updates from PeopleSoft. We implement the updates, then we gotta go learn what it does, and sometimes it catches up with us because we're working the workload from the prior semester, and we gotta do this one. So in some cases we have to do manual work, and you're absolutely correct, but it's not by choice, it's because we are forced to do it. Now, as soon as we get the time, we catch up with it, we automate it. Like this year, last year, the entire packaging for the summer term was done manually. This year has been automated. So we couldn't do it. That system was available last year, but we just didn't have the time to learn it. So the issue is not that it's a choice. It has to do with the federal government changing the rules. And if you talk to the folks in financial aid, they'll tell you whatever you learn today is probably not good for next year because it changes so much. But I'm giving you, I am giving you the information. I'm giving you the information. Laura, I'm sorry.
Molly has another example too. I would just, with the communication plan, it just happened today, this morning, yesterday afternoon, that apparently a new hold was put on students' accounts to verify their address and phone number, I think. Well, let me just, but, so students were having trouble enrolling, and they weren't sure what this hold was, and so they had to kind of track back and find out what was going on, where the students needed to go in the system to make that change so that they could then register. And the thought was that enrollment is down, and here we're putting another barrier to students enrolling, that maybe could that be placed someplace else, like maybe they couldn't get their grades until they verified that information, or something along those lines.
Okay, again, you're misinformed. So let me just tell you what it is. The federal government requires us every year for the purpose of veterans to verify veteran status. This is mandatory every term, not every year, every term. We've been doing this for over 5 or 6 years. The difference is in the past, we just gave you a pop-up which blocked you from doing everything. You couldn't do anything until you agreed to do that. So the new system has something called style guides, or guide style, whatever that is. So what it is that the only place that you'll get that is if you try to register. But you can still go check your grades and do everything else. So activity guides, thank you. So if you get to do that, what we've done now is we put an activity guide. It's not that we are blocking the student from doing anything. It's mandatory by federal government to check that. So they have to verify, and they have to click the button that says, yes, I accept, I understand my status. And in addition to that, we are supposed to make the students aware of their financial responsibility. Because I'm looking at the lawyer here, we cannot go collect money from the student for if they're not aware, they have not given us permission to understand that they have a financial responsibility for financial aid, even if they're not in financial aid. We have to have that information. So that process does that. It's not that we just created this hole because we wanted to do that. It's always been there. It's been there for the last 3 years. So it makes it look it's new because it looks different, but has been there all along for the last, I want to say, 3 years.
So we know there is a difference. It used to pop up. Students used to see it right there. They would react to it, obviously, as soon as they saw it. Now they have to go into a specific tile and actually verify all this information. That's one of the instructions that we're going to outline this week, because we only just discovered that maybe that was a barrier to enrollment. So there is a few changes in the new system that we're coming to the understanding, and it takes time, that may be impacting enrollment. So we're really trying to work through all the roadblocks that we find for students and fix them for students. And one of the things is communicating, as Dick says, communicating that it's something you have to do, but it's a different way of doing it. So that will be part of the communication this week.
I think too, students, many of them are waiting until their grades are in before they can register, especially if they're on any kind of academic probation. So I'm hoping there will be a sort of a bump once grades are in.
Like I said earlier, when you mentioned that verification barrier, 12,000 people have already done it. So if you think about the enrollment that we have per term, and all of them click and did that because they were interested in registering, they had the ability to register. We also have finished packaging everyone that we needed to package. So, I mean, we know that there's been some difficulty, and we saw that last week specifically because it was new to them. But by Friday, we had 11,000 students who had already done it. And another 1,000 more have done it so far since the beginning of this week. So.
And I think the issue is just the frontline people. They were getting, the emails and the phone calls, and they didn't have a solution. I mean, they didn't know what was going on, so I think they felt left out. But I mean, now we've got it resolved, and that's good. But yeah, so just something to remember.
Well, I think students don't always come to the specialist, so when you have other groups that may not have known and the students are asking them, that's where the miscommunication or the I don't knows come into play. And everyone doesn't direct them to see a specialist or an advisor or something of that nature as well. So that's where that gap, I think, is what we're referring to. Because some students are going to ask their professors because that's who they see every day. Yep. And especially if they're online or something like that. And if they don't know what to tell them, then that's where that's coming from.
And it's actually only, in the last couple of days, we've kind of identified this as the barrier. So as soon as we identify it, we try and get the information out to the front line. But maybe that's something we can improve in how we bubble up that information more quickly to folks who can actually resolve it technically or resolve it by communication.
Okay, so we were aware of the SEM Verify issue, and so what we did is we actually sent out, how many thousands, tell me ladies? To Canvas, through Canvas. We sent Canvas messaging out with screenshots of the new tiles and the, directions of how to remove it. And then we went through our assigned advisor shells, and so we had every advisor send the messaging out. And we noticed we started with how many on our list? I think Patty sent us a list of how many students had it? Yes. 11,000, and by the time we sent our Canvas message out and checked it 3 days later, it was down to 5,000. So we know that helped out quite a bit. And then we also opened, Ashley's team, the retention and completion specialist, offered open labs. So any students who were caught in the SEM Verify and verification, the rules. So we're getting the word out, and so students are aware that, we know that it looks different, but here's the tiles to get through it. And then, how many students actually came through this week? Did you get about 25? Well, every 25 enrollment helps, so anyway. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that we sent that messaging out, specific to SEM Verify for that messaging.
Okay, so the next topic was regarding supervisors and the mindset of managing workloads rather than leading staff. Oftentimes, a staff member's idea for improvement for the departments are met with, we've done it this way for years, or we've tried that before. So we're kind of seeking, information whether we're going to plan something as far as how to get supervisors to kind of coach up their staffs and coach up their teams and have more employee recognition and driving innovative thought from their team members and trying to implement those things.
I feel like somebody got into my head and wrote this with, this is exactly what I would like to see happen. The Leadership Academy motto is what? Lead from where you are. And I think that, we'd really like to sort of imbue the college culture with the fact that everybody is a leader, everybody has a role in terms of being an educator for our students and for each other. My initial sense, not being here very long, but maybe this is going to require some culture change at the institution. And of course, that is always challenging and may feel slow at times. So I think we need to find ways to initiate that change and really try to take on an innovative and entrepreneurial mindset across divisions and departments. Now, I'd also like May to talk a little bit about what we're doing with all the great colleges results and this feedback and Leadership Academy feedback, because I think that's another area where we could do this.
Sure. That's what he said next.
Okay, so first of all, just like Dr. Lorenz said, this is a cultural phenomenon, and I don't think it's widespread. I think it's in pockets where employees may feel this way, and the reason I say that is, believe it or not, we do get a lot of positive feedback from certain areas or certain departments where they really feel connected and engaged with their supervisors, their leaders. They feel their leaders are very motivating, that they communicate well, that they care about them, that they listen to their ideas. So when you take all that together, what we'd like to do is a couple things. And one is sharing best practices within like supervisor circles and leadership circles with each other. And I was just at an event the other day where Stephen, because I'm looking at you, Stephen, and Doug and Tommy, I think we were all at a table. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember if it was Doug or Tommy, but one of you were asking something about, well, how do you deal with this when this happens during the middle of a semester? And Stephen was like, oh, this is what I've done and this has worked pretty well. So I think the reason that happens is because we just allowed time for that conversation that we might not allow because we're so busy throughout our day. But when you set time aside for, we're going to just talk about best practices right now and learn from each other, it helps. And these great supervisors that we've heard about and that we know are out there, the next phase in our supervisory development is actually having our own employees train and coach and help others. So to Shayla's question, I'm looking for them. So if you want to share with me, and we have some already lined up for different topics, but in this topic, if you know supervisors or you work with supervisors that really listen to their employees to this point and are open and innovative, let us know. And that's one thing that we're going to start doing. We'll have different topics, like supervisors that do a really great job at recognizing their staff and appreciating them. We'll have all these different topics that we'll learn from each other. And as part of the second phase, we also in HR are creating some learning modules for supervisors as well, and for people that aspire to be supervisors. So it's not just stopping with the supervisor level. We have a lot of feedback from our career service that they too would like access to these tools, and they're not secret, they're not proprietary. So we're glad to do that, we're glad to share. So that was one thing. And then Dr. Lorenz specifically wanted me to talk about, what are we doing with all this feedback that we receive? And we actually are collecting it, and we'll keep it hasn't happened yet, it's on my to-do list, but we'll keep a log, a track of all of these exchange of views that we've had since Dr. Lorenz has been here, and kind of what's the update, what's the progress update on these. And we're collecting feedback from exchange of views, from great colleges, from the committee that Sabrina is part of, the Employee Excellence Committee. They've had several different opportunities where people have come and given feedback. All of that is in a place where it is then going to be given out to your constituent group. So for this group, P-TECH, you'll all receive an email from probably Michael. And do you want to elaborate on that? What happens then? Do they know?
Not yet, but we mentioned it a little bit. Okay. Yeah. We mentioned this in the last general meeting for those who are looking live and not Memorex. What we're going to do is send, it's a dated thing, my apologies, a survey of the top items that you would like to submit to the executive team for them to, I'm going to use the word immediately loosely, but immediately focus on, or as a top priority, because if we have a list of 8, and we pick the top 2 as a constituent group that we want and we vote on, then we'll forward that up to the executive team, and they'll gather that with what Career Service Employee Council, Faculty Senate said as well, so they can put that into, as Dr. Lorenz has been alluding to this past hour and a bit, the new strategic plan or something, so we can see more momentum on those issues that we feel strongly about.
And that should be going out next week.
Yes, it will.
Are you going to take this?
I'll take it. You handed it off to me. Okay, so the last item is something that actually has been expressed to me by Summer Pescatore, who's the Career Service Employee Council chair, and other people I've gotten to know at the institution here. And so a little awkward because it does involve us in this room and those watching, but staff have expressed the fear of reprisal from the supervisors when questioning processes or even offering suggestions to improve a weaker area of their department. And so that actually hurts because a lot of the staff have worked with us for years. There are colleagues or friends, they used to be professional technical appointed. We had the compensation study and it flipped. And so it's, supervising is one item here. There's also leading from within. Okay, but there's also something that we had discussed during our board and officers meeting that we would like to see if we could strive to implement a 360 feedback system, which is what some organizations do, where I get to tell my supervisor, hey, great job, I could use more support in this area. And then conversely, I'm going to pick on Shayla, would be able to get feedback, we'll say, from, let's see, Gerald, in certain areas, as we were talking earlier about peer feedback for that, as well as supervisory feedback on top-down. And that's not to pick on anyone, but I go back to the Detroit model, and then I'll let the executive team go through, where if I'm working on the line, putting a part in a car, but I have to undo what May did in order to get my item in, could I then put my item in before May? So just change my part in the assembly line and being able to offer feedback to say, this is a process that I see is a hindrance and where we can grow, and to reduce the concept that I'm afraid to talk to my supervisor because I'm going to get reprisal for. I do have more firsthand knowledge of that, not me experiencing it. So, but I've been aware of things like that. So if anybody wants to ask for a specific example for my group, I'm more than happy to, but we're going to segue to Dr.
So we did talk about this with the CSEC, I think that was last week. And this is something I've heard, since our fall exchange of views repeated. And it's frustrating for us to hear because this is certainly not the way we want people to experience their workplace. And we know that everybody has great ideas and should be able to offer those ideas without any fear of retribution or what have you. But we also need actionable information. This is really amorphous, and we can't impact it if we don't know where it's happening. We don't need to do that here. But approaching May or somebody else in HR or one of us to let us know how we can even address it would be very helpful. Because when it's this thing out there, we can't wrap our arms around it. And if we, go about trying to address it and address it in the wrong areas, it would be futile. So that would be my request, that we need to know where.
I know the feedback from Career Service Employee Council also, because I was there for something else and they were talking about this, I think it goes back to the 360. They don't feel like there's a place for them to provide that feedback anonymously without getting in trouble. Like it's kind of chicken and egg kind of situation right now.
Do you want to talk about the pilot of 360?
Sure.
Oh, like holding hands. Okay.
So yes, so that is disheartening. I know I speak for everyone on an executive team. That is the exact opposite of what we're trying to build. And like I said, there's some really great pockets here, and we just want to replicate that everywhere. So I would highly encourage you, if you can't talk to your supervisor, are there any other levels in your division that you could talk to and you can open up to? If not, could you go to a different division? Could you go and talk with Janet? Could you come and talk with HR? There's many people that work in HR. If there's someone in HR, I would really love if you would share that with me. If it's me, you can share that with Dr. Lorenz. I mean, there's always somewhere to go. So I just hope you exercise that. And the reason why I don't have any fear and most people don't have any fear about that is because we all have good intentions. I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, who can I retaliate against today? I mean, I don't think that that's typical or normal. So there's probably maybe 1 or 2% of the population that may act in that way, but the majority of people here really love their jobs. They love their coworkers. They care about Seminole State so much. And so anything you can do to help us tackle this would be really appreciated. So with the 360, I think those are two separate issues. I appreciate both of them, but the reprisal is kind of just something that stands alone. I mean, that just in and of itself, we can't tolerate that. So the next issue, I see as something that works really well at healthy institutions and healthy relationships. So I wouldn't use it as a solution to this problem. I would keep those as two separate issues. That being said, as the head of HR, I don't feel comfortable advocating to institute it college-wide because what you're telling me is that there's some serious concerns. That would require different intervention and not a 360 tool. 360s are really separate from any type of evaluation or negative action. They're really a personal tool for that individual to use to be even better. And therefore, I do think they're great, and I think there's a place and a time for them. So what we're going to do is recommend a couple areas that will pilot that. We want volunteers, people that are interested in. I'm looking in the back. I already have one of my volunteers. I know Morgan Tracy really wants to do that and is interested in what his peers think and wants to ensure he's continuing to do things well. So that's one area that I know we'll work on. We're developing, just starting, talking about that and developing that in HR to help. But really, even HR doesn't necessarily need to be a part of that. That's really something for the individual. And then if they want to share that with their supervisor and their team, they're able to. But let's not confuse that with solving this very serious issue. I'd just like to say that.
Okay, as we end, can I?
Janet, do you want to add anything?
As May has separated the 360 from the word evaluation, those two concepts I think are going to stay separate on our campus. We are really looking at the feedback here that was provided, that there seems to be a feeling that retaliation might be practiced for those who suggest something new. Retaliation is a violation of the college policy 1.060. Retaliation normally is thought of in terms of those who have made a complaint of discrimination, but anybody can come and talk to me. Anybody can come and talk to me in confidence, and I find that very important to say. There are things that I have to report: fraud, waste, mismanagement, child abuse, abuse of a vulnerable person. Of course I have to take that forward. But things that you might talk to me about that would be improvements for the college, I might tell you that's not part of the formal process here. However, I think I know how to start working on that. And that might be, you might see me appear at one of your staff meetings with a general presentation. You never know. That might get the point across. Now, don't be afraid if I show up at one of your staff meetings now. It's not because I've always been called to help solve this problem. But the idea of retaliation is prohibited at our campus, and I wanted to say that visiting with me is just that. It's a visit. It's not a complaint. It's coming to talk and see if there is a resource that we could apply, something that we could do together. Do you want me to approach it? Do you need to be coached on how you might approach it because you think that's better to work on something directly? And I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so Andrea, as we round out the first hour, Dr. Lorenz has an update that she'd like to give before we open up for open forum. Side note, Dr. Lorenz and Mr. Collins do have to leave at 2:18 p.m. so they can take a different attention area for now. So if you see them get up and leave, it's not because you're questioning they're avoiding. It's simply to accommodate their schedule.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I have to leave a little early. I wanted to give a quick legislative update for what it's worth. We are still sort of in the morass of the legislative process. Apparently, conferences will not start until April 22nd, so I don't have very definitive information for you. But right now, we only have $2 million set aside for Building L. We actually need 5.2, between 5.2 and 5.3, which is what the request, the request we made. This was a building that was originally funded in 2007, and it's dragged on and on and on. And we were the number 2 project on the PICO list. We were the only one in the governor's proposed budget, and we've only gotten $2 million. So it's so far. Obviously, our lobbyist is still working on closing that gap. PICO is not popular this year with the legislature. particularly on the House side, there was a House conforming bill number 5501 that had sort of everything in the kitchen sink in it, including PICO, and it would require us to raise 10% of the money for a given building that we were requesting money for prior to even being able to request it. So for a second building in Altamont, for example, we would need to raise locally $5 million before they would entertain our request. They would only fund, this is really circular logic, only fund things with PICO money that had previously been funded. Well, at some point they're going to run out of things that were previously funded. So there's also things in that conforming bill about the direct support organizations and really kind of limiting the financial relationship and other things between the college and the direct support organizations. I think the impression that the House has is that we have buckets of money sitting in the foundation that we're not using, and that could support college operations. Well, over 92% of our foundation funds are restricted for scholarships and very specific programmatic things that the donor has said, this is what I want my money to do. So we're trying to clarify understanding around all of these issues. The Senate is not accepting the House conforming bill. They said it needs to go through the regular process. At this point in the session, we don't know what that means. I asked Don Payton, our lobbyist, so now that they've said that, what's going to happen next? He said, I don't know. I've never seen this happen before. So we know all those issues in that House bill are out there, and they're still sort of threatening to us, but we don't know actually how they may or may not be dealt with. Both the House and the Senate have passed their respective budgets. The House is less favorable for us. It's $400 million less than the Senate budget. So obviously we're supporting the Senate budget. The Senate budget actually would make our funding essentially flat as compared to last year, and we are not including the extra gold money that we got. So flat pre-gold money, pre-extra gold money. The performance funding formula may also be changed this year, which doesn't feel great because we're already, practically done with this year. Today, I got an update that they have advocated for removing some language that would change the performance funding formula and advocate for a group to come together to study performance funding for a year. In that case, what I predict is they will make minor changes to the performance funding formula for this year, which would essentially mean it's unlikely we would take money from colleges that went purple to benefit those that go gold. So we probably would still have less performance funding than last year, kind of regardless of what happens. We are worried about interior design getting deregulated, but they were pulled from the repealer bill on the Senate side just 2 nights ago. So there's hope that the licensure will remain as is with interior design, which is very important for our program, our alums, our students, our faculty, and the career. And there's still a lot of stuff going on with dual enrollment that we're not entirely sure how it will work out, but it probably will be a financial hit to the college because we will likely be required to, this is kind of backwards to say, but required to not charge private and homeschool students for dual enrollment, whereas with the school districts, we can charge essentially the cost of tuition if we offer the course here. Did I get that right? Yeah, okay. I wanted to take a moment just to thank everybody who was involved in the organization of it, everybody who attended the inauguration. It was wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It could not have been more perfect. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who touched it in any way. It was great. Going back to strategic planning, we are 3 meetings down for the Strategic Outlook and Review, or SOAR team. And as I mentioned, we'll be having strategic planning summits in the fall. I think at least one of them has already been scheduled for November. So please watch for that. And thank you to Michael for being your voice on the SOAR team. And other than that, really looking forward to end of the semester activities. There's lots of fun stuff going on. I know we're all feel like we're barreling towards the end of the semester, but it's all good stuff. We're still waiting to hear about our 4 semifinalists for the Jack Kent Cook Scholarship. I met one of our previous winners today. An alum stopped by my office. So that was fun, but we have all of our fingers and toes crossed for that.
Thank you, Dr. Lorenz. Okay, so now we'll open up the floor, and hopefully online, if the Q&A doesn't work, again, email didn't work at seminolestate.edu. For any follow-up questions to these or any questions that you may have had come up that weren't addressed here.
Well, thank you once again for having this. This is really a great opportunity for us to hear some things. I had just a comment mostly related to the last 2 things we talked about, supervisors. Again, like you, I'm distressed about the number 6, about the fear of reprisal. But one of the, and very encouraged to hear you talk about culture change and looking at innovation and how to encourage that and develop that at all levels. One of the things that's been a frustration to me, and I'm not sure, this is maybe more of a comment than a question, but I've tried to do this among the staff that I supervise, and tried to do this myself, and this isn't directed at any individual or department or anything like that. But one of the things I've noticed is that, you know, from my perspective, innovation is not always innate. We don't just come up with these great ideas on our own. We're often looking outside of our borders to find those ideas. And I've had several experiences where I have found those ideas at other institutions and say, you know, this might be a good one to tweak, to modify, to adapt to our specific context. And have been told by very, very many different people, no, again, no isolation of anybody, but, you know, don't tell them that you got it from here. Don't say that was a UCF thing. Don't say that was a Valencia thing. Don't say it was what, and that's very strange to me, and I don't know if that's maybe to be addressed in the culture change, because, you know, my thing is I invent the wheel, and there are so many things that are in my area specifically. There's so many great initiatives that are happening at other institutions that I want to reach out to them and say, hey, can we use your idea here, and then talk about it and see if it does work and try it, and if it fails, fine, but if it succeeds, great. But not to, you know, the point of it all is that that's been a little distressing to me, is kind of the idea, well, you know, don't mention whatever that is, don't mention that you had that associated with that specific institution, because that's seen as a negative connotations with that. And I'm not sure how to address that, but that's a challenge that I'd love to overcome and be able to speak freely and say, hey, UCF's doing this great thing in their libraries. Maybe we could do it here and have that be, or Valencia's doing this, or FSU, or the FCSJ, whether it's a college or university or wherever. So anyway, that's just a concern of mine that I think, I hear you all talking about, and I'm highly supportive of it, with the idea of the innovation percolating from the bottom up, but that's one of the things that I've noticed. There have been several projects like that that kind of hit that roadblock, and that was it, because, we didn't want to be compared to that. So I'm not sure.
I'm not sure exactly what to say in response, other than that does seem sort of silly. And the other thing is, as an academic institution, we should be citing where we get these ideas. So certainly that's something we can try to combat together. I've heard some sort of like Debbie Downer comments about Valencia as well. I'd really like, I think there are a lot of things we do really well. There are a lot of things Valencia does really well, and I think we can really learn from each other. And I'd really like to, yes, they are our competition, but I'd really like to strike sort of a chord of partnership with Valencia. And if there are 1,000 people coming to Central Florida every week, and Valencia, Seminole, and UCF are going to have to figure out how to serve them, we're going to have to work together. So I'd only say that because you mentioned those colleges' names, but rivalry between higher ed institutions is what it is, but yes, let's be innovative and combat it.
So since we were talking about innovation, and it's come up, there might be some barriers. My experience, I've worked at Seminole State for quite some time now, more than a decade, and there was an idea that I remember having about my second year in, and I'm just now kind of able to, we're 3 semesters in with doing that idea. I kind of made a full circle in how many different departments I worked at till I got back so I could do that. But I'm finding that although I can innovate and my employees can, there's often policies that create some barriers, and I know we're working on some policies. However, it just seems like it takes so long. So I'm my 3rd semester into this idea, but we're still not able to align with policy. So I just have a little bit of concern with, I want to innovate, I want my people to innovate, but the process is so slow that I feel a little bit of fear that I'm not following the policy, but the policy's not there for me to follow.
So the policy doesn't exist, or we need to change the policy to accommodate the innovation?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
It's partly like a remote.
Practice, there's practice
Right.
in place, but
Uh-huh.
there's no formality for the procedure
Yeah.
at this point. It is being looked at.
Yeah.
Right, and the problem is there's multiple departments, right? So we have payroll, we have HR, my department, and so it ends up where it's because there's so many departments involved, and by the time we say, here's what we need, you know, and we're 3 semesters later, I have a whole new staff now because my staff is mostly students, so they're gone and I have new people. So it gets to be a little bit of a difficult, I want to be innovative, but sometimes I feel like I have to do it in secret or go around, you know, so I think that's kind of a common feeling.
Yeah. Well, in terms of policy, maybe there's a way we can look at CAC operations, College Advisory Council, right? To try to speed that up or institute something to help people understand what it is they're trying to do impacts policy and vice versa. But I hear what you're saying, and I can think of examples from my own career that I think jibe with what you're saying. And this goes back to also looking at ways that we can have better interdepartmental collaboration and communication. So I don't really have an answer, but I hear you.
Yeah, and I think one suggestion too, sometimes we do a lot of things through email, but we do just need to meet, and you know, we have to make the time to get the stakeholders together to come up with a solution. I just feel like if we could do that, we could spend an hour on something and we'd really make some progress.
Good. May just prompted me. I could also give you an update on the vice president searches that are going on right now. So I'll start with the vice president for student affairs. The committee has done the initial round of interviews, which were video conference style interviews, and they have narrowed it down to a pool of semifinalists. We're right now going through some checks and verifications with the semifinalists, and then we will bring them to campus for in-person interviews with the committee. I think the goal is to wrap all that up by the end of this month, and then we will have the finalists. And I'm anticipating somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 is kind of the goal. And we will bring those finalists to campus for open forums, meeting with student affairs staff, meeting with students, meeting with the executive team, and then a final interview with me. And I'm asking that I have May from HR in the final interviews with me, as well as the chair of any selection committee, for which I'm the hiring manager. So there'll be 3 of us in that final interview with the candidates. And then for our chief financial officer, Rick's very anxious to hear about this one. I decided to close the search, and we're reposting the position within the next few weeks. And the position will be open again for 4 to 6 weeks. And we're essentially starting that process over, and the committee is able to remain the same except for one faculty member who had a schedule conflict, so that person's been replaced with another faculty member on the committee. So stay tuned on that one.
And since absolutely now, if there are no other updates then, or questions, comments, concerns? Going once, going twice? Okay, well, we thank all of you for joining us live and streaming for this. Thank you, executive team, for your time. We do truly appreciate this. Board and officers, great job as always. And you all are happily dismissed.